Ready to make a real impact every day? Join the Active Day Home Care team and help clients maintain their independence in the comfort of their own homes. Make a difference in someone's life as you provide essential daily assistance and protect their health and happiness. Earn up to $20 an hour and enjoy additional perks like optional daily pay, 401k, paid time off, ongoing educational training, and more. Join a team that values care, compassion, and your professional growth. Visit activeday.com to apply.
Now, the Hunt Palmer Show.
A magic beyond anything you could ever imagine.
You are now listening to the Hunt Palmer Show. Brought to you by Sagrera Farms on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Locking down the middle of the day.
You really think that's the best idea?
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio, this is Hunt Palmer.
It's quite a piece of work.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Mercedes-Benz at Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city on this Thursday. Means we're brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef. Got Jacob Beck and Paul O'Neill back there on the ones and twos. Fired up with you with us here for the next couple of hours. Plenty to do here before 3 o'clock. NFL all 25-year team for this quarter century. 3 LSU Tigers on it. We'll talk about it in the next segment. Joe Healy, D1 Baseball's SEC Extra team, with us at 1:30 as he has been all season long. Joe was in Omaha for the duration of the College World Series, so we'll put a bow on that with Joe coming up. Pell's draft last night. Keith Law got a story about fastest risers in this draft coming up here next month. And there are 2 Tigers in that draft that I want to talk about as well. Chris Blair will join us at 2:15. We got to talk Saints as well, so lots and lots to do. Lock us in here until 3 o'clock. We'll start things off the same way we do every single day with our Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's opening drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
So last night, the 2025 National Championship team was honored at Alex Box Stadium. It was on the SEC Network for those who couldn't make it out. Certainly, Alex Box Stadium was open and the grandstand was completely full last night. And I thought the celebration was great. I mean, look, I can do without the political talks. I understand why they happen. It has nothing to do with which side of the aisle you're on. 2 years ago, it was John Bel Edwards and Sharon Weston Broom. This time around, it's Sid Edwards and Jeff Landry. I'm confident that not a single person who walked through the gates of Alex Box Stadium needed to hear a single word from any politician last night. But it's fine. It's it's part of the city and the state, and I get why it all happens. But I thought the rest of it was great. I thought Bill Franquez did an awesome job in introducing the players. They all got their individual moment to come out of the dugout and walk through the smoke and have their name called. I thought it was awesome that Jay Johnson was – Kate Anderson and Anthony Ianson were last to come out, which I thought was really, really cool. Jay Johnson was the next guy out. And then maybe the coolest moment of the entire thing, and I can't be certain, but I'm confident in watching that Bill Franquez choked up maybe a little bit when introducing Skip Bertman. That may be a stretch. Maybe he was swallowing to make sure he projected properly. I'm not sure. But either way, I think it was emotional for a lot of people, and it was wonderful for everyone there that Skip was able to make it and was able to be there and to relish in this. We know that it's been a tough spring for Coach Bertman with the loss of Sandy, and so for Bill to recognize him, for Jay Johnson to recognize him, and for the people there gathered to be able to recognize him in such an amazing moment. Because make no mistake, like when something like this happens forevermore, Skip is a huge reason for it. He hasn't coached for 25 years, and he's a huge reason for it. And I think to have him represented was fantastic there, and acknowledged was great. I thought that they brought the players up. The guys, and they say this in some interviews, and they say this when they're doing little press conferences back after games and whatnot. Like, they're more nervous in front of a microphone than they are with a bat or ball or glove in their hand. They just that comes natural to them. Answering the questions doesn't. But they mustered through it. It was Josh Pearson. Jared Jones was great. He was the most eloquent of the players in talking about his decision to come back to LSU and why that was important and standing right here where he was and why that was a dream come true. Josh talked about being roommates, Josh Pearson with John Pearson, and how great that was this year. Stephen Milam talked about his relationship with Alex Bregman Weigman and coming from New Mexico and playing shortstop at LSU and how big a deal that was. Cade Anderson talked about growing up an LSU fan and dreaming to be right where he was in that moment at Alex Box Stadium, and that was really, really cool. And then Jay Johnson spoke at the end, and I thought gave a great address to the fans. And he first thanked the LSU fans, saying like the thing he loves about LSU fans, it doesn't matter if it's at the box in Omaha on a Wednesday and on Saturday morning at 1:17 a.m., they never run out of energy. And he saluted the fans and the fan base. He talked about the mantra of this team, the toughness and the togetherness. And when I hear Jay Johnson talk about the 2023 team, I hear terms like best team in college baseball history, best pitcher on the planet, best player I've ever coached. Some of those superlatives quickly emerged for him. And I didn't hear a lot of that with this team. He did call Cade Anderson the best pitcher in the country. And he did call Stephen Milam the best shortstop in the country. And he is prone to a little bit of hyperbole in that way. But the resounding message that Jay Johnson gave about this team last night was the toughness and the togetherness. He said that they were as tough a team mentally as he's been around in 25 years. And I believe him when he says that. There are some things that Jay will say, and I'll say he's either talking to his team or talking to the selection committee, and maybe he wouldn't mean that verbatim the way that he actually said it. I'm learning there, but that's kind of the way that I read it. I don't think this is that. I think he really believed that this team took some of the scars that last year's team had, even though there are only 13 guys back, and they remade themselves into something that was different, something that was really resilient and really tough, and a team that didn't mind having to come back in the ninth inning against Tennessee, and didn't mind having to come back against Arkansas, and didn't mind having to come back against Little Rock, and didn't mind having a rain delay in Omaha that took Anthony Einson off the mound, and didn't mind any of that. They just continued to push forward, and they never had a prolonged streak of bad baseball, as he termed it after the national championship game. Like, the only hiccup they had was at Auburn. They just played a bad weekend. And I've given you this stat a million times just to put that in context. Like, 2023, there were some great teams in the SEC. Florida made the championship series. Tennessee was awesome that year. Like, there were some really good SEC teams. Arkansas is always good. And everybody got swept except LSU. Like, that can happen in a hurry in the SEC. And this team, it happened to them once, but they never succumbed to it again. And he talked about the toughness, the togetherness. And then he, spoke to how much being at LSU means to him, and said, we're here as long. I can't remember the exact quote, but it was something that we're thrilled to be here and wouldn't consider going anywhere else. And then thank you, and kind of the curtain dropped. And it was just a very, very cool, very quick 1 hour celebration of a team that absolutely deserves it. As I said yesterday, as you would expect, the Intimidator was just the logo of the new national championship, and the merchandise is now available online at lsushop.net, and they popped the fireworks now that the darkness had set in, and I thought that was really cool. It was just a great scene at the box to see that many people there, to see that many parents and supporters there, to see the entire team recognized, to be able to speak to some of them and have Jay address the crowd. And one thing that I thought was really cool, and I certainly can't walk the concourse and interview every single person, but one of the things that I thought was cool was this gives the opportunity for those that couldn't or didn't make it to Omaha to celebrate this team. I mean, it was a great moment on the field at Charles Schwab Stadium to watch those guys receive their trophies and to play It's a Great Day to Be Alive, which plays when LSU wins games, and to watch them do the victory lap and all that goes into that was awesome. But a lot of people can't be there. Now, a lot of people were, but a lot of people can't be there. They can get to the box if they're here in Baton Rouge or down here in the South Louisiana corridor. And the other thing you have to think about is, I'm assuming that some exit interviews probably happened over the last 48 hours, and that there will be more to come in the next 48 hours, I would think. Just stands to reason. And then, guys are getting to summer leagues. Like, Devin Sheeran's already up there. He wasn't with this team in the postseason. He was going to pitch. He tore his ACL last summer, and, he's up at Cape Cod pitching. But guys, William Schmidt's got to go get innings. And John Pearson needs at-bats. And, some of that stuff has got to happen pretty quickly. And then you've got guys that are going to get ready for the draft as well. So this team is going to go its separate ways starting now. So for them to be able to come together one more time as a team, I'm sure they've been doing this for 3 days, but that time's going to be really quick when you talk about their entire journey here at LSU and what they do in baseball. And for those guys to have the opportunity to be together one more time in that stadium and hear that song and to see their accomplishments up on the Jumbotron where they played the highlight reels and to see the Intimidator repainted and to see the fans come out and salute them one more time is just a very, very cool thing and something that you gotta do. And so I thought it was very, very cool that they televised on an SEC network and that it all got to happen. It's a small thing, but it's a cool thing, I think. And I saw a great little tweet that somebody had put out earlier today. I can't remember where it was, or I'd go find it and give some attribution. But somebody said that the next version of the Intimidator is just going to be a dry erase board, so you can put tally marks. You don't want to go through the entire process of redoing all the artwork. Just put another line on it, and we'll just get back to it next year. I don't think it's quite that easy, but I found the humor in it. I enjoyed that very much. So shout out to the LSU baseball team, 2025 national champs. We've been talking about them for 2 days, and we'll continue to talk about them moving forward. We'll talk to Joe Healy in 20 minutes about what he thought of this team. We'll talk to Chris Blair at 2:15 about his final thoughts on this baseball team. They deserve conversation, and now you're heavy into the transfer portal. And Jay Johnson was asked yesterday on the stage, like, how quickly did you get into the portal once the game ended? He said, once the plane landed, we were on it. And they are. It's very clearly they're involved in a number of players right now, and I would imagine there will be some visitors this weekend. In fact, I'm confident there will be visitors this weekend. And you're going to see some commitments in the next week for LSU for next year's baseball team. That's the next step in this process. We'll talk about some guys that may be drafted and move quickly at 2 o'clock, because Keith Law has 2 LSU Tigers that he feels like could be guys in this draft that move very quickly through systems. I'll get you those names as we move along here on this Thursday. Our Thursday shows are brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef. Look, you got 4th of July coming up. Certainly, you've got Labor Day at the end of the summer here. Summer's grilling season. And if you're going to put something on the grill, make it awesome. Make it Sagrera Farms. You're talking about the top 1% of beef in the country, and it's right here, just outside Baton Rouge. Call my guy Sean Sagrera, contact him, say, hey, I'm interested in a side or a whole cow to get into my freezer because I want the top 1% of the beef nationwide. You're talking about intramuscular fat content of 13, 14, 15, 16%. 9 is prime. That's the best of the best. Ground beef, fillets, ribeyes, strips, chuck roast, whatever you want. They got it at Sagrera Farms, and it is the best of the best. It's a 3-year journey for every animal on that farm. Starts with genetically mating some of the finest cattle in the country, and it's raised on grass, finished on grain, aged 35, 45 days, got no moisture. And when you pick up that cow, you're going to know that your beef has one DNA. Do you know when you go pick up your general beef on Sunday, Monday? Look into it. Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef, just outside of Baton Rouge, and they bring you our Thursday shows each and every week. Step aside. When we come back, LSU well represented on ESPN's all 25-year team, first 25 years of this century. We'll tell you what 3 Tigers are honored next.
The Hunt Palmer Show. You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms.
All right, we got Joe Healy coming up in 15 minutes talking LSU baseball mostly. Got Chris Blair talking LSU baseball as well. Pelicans did just have a couple draft picks last night and made a trade that the internet certainly commenting on. So we have some real things to talk about for sure. And I understand that we get into some list season things this time of year. It's just the nature of it. But I think whenever LSU is well represented somewhere on the national stage, it's worth a mention. And ESPN put together the all quarter century team. They put together a 53-man roster and coaches based on 2000 through 2025. And I was like, all right, let's see how many LSU guys are represented. And I only put 2 on my list that I thought had a really good chance of making it. It turns out there were 3. I was 1 short, and we'll get into it here, and then we'll talk about where that puts LSU as far as the rest of the country goes. The 2 that I was confident had a real chance to make the team, I don't know if I would have put either one slam dunk, but I was confident, were Alan Faneca and Patrick Peterson, and both did make the list. At left guard, Alan Faneca says he was a 175 starts, 1-time Super Bowl champ, 8-time All-Pro. A stalwart left guard for the Steelers before late career spells with the Jets and Cardinals. Faneca missed only 1 game from 2000 on, and that was due to rest in a meaningless Week 17 contest in 2001. His 6 first-team All-Pro selections are more than any other left guard this quarter century. Alan Faneca, truly one of the great offensive linemen in the history of the NFL, and a great representative of LSU. Also, really not carrying much weight these days when you see pictures of him. So Alan Faneca at left guard was a slam dunk, and Patrick Peterson was on the list at corner. I knew that he had made a lot of Pro Bowls. I knew that he was very highly regarded. I didn't know if he would make the team at corner. The blurb reads, Peterson's career had a long tail, but that shouldn't overshadow his 8-year peak from 2011 to 17. He was above average in yards allowed per target in each season in the early part of his career, peaking when he allowed a league-leading 4.4 yards per target in 2015. He's also 9th in total interceptions during the last 25 years. So that puts Pat Pete on the list. I did not have a third member of this team at the ready. And I'm curious, Beck, if you want to toss a guess in at who the third LSU player in the all-quarter century team is. We have Faneca, we have Peterson. Do you have a third guess here?
Man, that's tough. No, it wouldn't be him. Man. Joe Burrow?
It's not Joe Burrow. No, he
hasn't been long enough.
You're talking. This is Brady, Manning, and Mahomes.
Yeah,
so you're having a tough time swimming in those waters, especially when you've got guys like Breeze and like that. You're not gonna jump up. It's actually a current Pro Bowler. So you're on the right track there.
Okay.
Played here with Burrow.
Oh, not Jamar Chase.
Justin Jefferson is on this list.
Okay.
The wide receivers are Julio Jones.
Well, that makes sense.
Julio, they have 6 wide receivers. So it's Randy Moss, Calvin Johnson, Julio Jones, Terrell Owens, Marvin Harrison, and Justin Jefferson.
Wow.
And I'll be honest, I'm surprised he's thought of in that air.
I'm not. I kind of am, but at the same time, I mean, he obviously still hasn't played as long as those guys.
No.
But
Here's the stat that gets you. He's a 4-time All-Pro.
Yes.
Which means at this point, it's you can't call him anything but a likely Hall of Famer.
Oh, likely. Very sure. Yes.
I mean, theoretically, they got quarterback issues in Minnesota now. They've moved on, and you're going to go with, and I'm blanking on the Michigan quarterback that they drafted.
Oh, J.J.
McCarthy. They've got McCarthy there, and maybe it doesn't work, and maybe his numbers go in the toilet. I don't know. But at this point, it's likely that Justin Jefferson's going to the Hall of Fame. And I don't know if this morning at 8 o'clock I would have made that statement because I just haven't sat down and looked at Justin Jefferson's resume. But you go, you're talking about an offensive player of the year and a 4-time All-Pro. He beat out on this list the next 2 guys they put on the practice squad that are, next bit up, Antonio Brown and Andre Johnson. And that's pretty heady stuff for Justin Jefferson.
Yeah.
And you consider that you had at least 1 Hall of Fame wide receiver, maybe 2. I don't know what Jamar's got left in the tank. Not to say he's almost done. I don't know what's to come for Jamar Chase, but Jefferson's just about there. And if you've got the best quarterback in program history, a Heisman winner, and 2 Hall of Fame receivers off that team, that starts to get to pretty elite level stuff here. And so Justin Jefferson is on the list. If you were curious where 3 players left LSU on the college perspective, who had more than that, I can tell you that Miami did. The rest is, I was looking at Alabama names, and they do have Julio Jones and Derrick Henry are on this list as starters. I'm not sure if there's another Alabama player listed. I'm rolling through, and I don't see another Alabama player besides those two. So just Derrick Henry and yep, that's it. So it's Miami is the only team that trumped LSU. They've got Ray Lewis on this list, Devin Hester on this list, Ed Reed on this list, Vince Wilfork on this list, and Calais Campbell on this list. There are a couple of different Miami generations represented there, but that Ed Reed, Vince Wilfork group, and Hester was right after that, and Lewis was right before that.
So I'm seeing Justin Jefferson. He's a 2-time first team. He's also a 2-time second team. So it's not. He doesn't.
That's four first teams.
It's not four first teams, but it's still 2 firsts and 2 seconds, and you would likely think that he's going to maybe get at least a few more of those. And he also, of course, was the offensive player of the year in 2022.
Doesn't it depend on if J.J. McCarthy's worth his salt at all?
Yeah, it does. It does. But
I mean,
like, think about it.
There's a chance he's Jake Locker.
Yeah, it's possible.
So, I mean, we'll see. But that's crazy stuff. And I think this is something that's going to continue to fester in my brain as a sports talk show host, especially in the summers. Over the next, I think it's fair to say, 8 years. Over the next 8 years, you're going to start to stack up LSU against that Miami team as far as pros go and as far as Pro Bowlers and All Pros and Hall of Famers go. And I don't think it's realistic to think LSU is going to get there as far as Hall of Famers from that 2001 Miami team. It's obscene. But they did as well in the draft, and they've got the ability on the high end to make this happen. I don't think anybody else besides Burrow, Chase, and Jefferson are potential Hall of Famers. I think it was very cool that Lloyd Cushenberry signed the richest center contract ever. I think it's been very cool to watch a couple of those offensive linemen like Damian Lewis really have solid careers as well. Patrick Queen has been awesome at 2 different stops. Maybe Derek Stingley can get there. Like that's a real thing. I don't think Grant Delpit or Christian Fulton are Hall of Famers, but maybe Stingley could. And I'm asking a lot here. I'm asking to make the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It's a very heavy discussion, but like it's not completely out of the question to put 4 guys there. And if you do that, you really level the playing field. And what I'm really trying to get this thing boiled down to, and when you talk about Miami against LSU, because you can never win the argument, right? Like, there's no way you can win it. They can't play if you're a Miami fan or if you paid more attention in the early 2000s or if you're an LSU fan or you were too young back then and now you're mature enough to have watched that 19 team. Like, you may feel like LSU's better. You can't really win, but Miami's got the leg up when it comes to the NFL stuff. I'm trying to get this boiled down to, okay, one of these teams had Ken Dorsey and one of them had Joe Burrow. That's if I can get the argument to that, then I feel like I can win it. And this is a good deal for Justin Jefferson to be on this list. Now, Joe Burrow's not nearly going to put the skins on the wall that Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, and Peyton Manning have. Let's see who they put as the practice squad quarterbacks, because I'd missed that initially and then saw it after I was scrolling through again. But it's I would imagine you've got to have maybe Roethlisberger and Breeze on that. Rodgers and Breeze are the other two. So that's the next tier there, and I'm assuming Roethlisberger and maybe Eli come in after that with Russell Wilson maybe coming in. But that's Joe Burrow's not there yet. Like he's on a great trajectory. He's had a great start to his career. I don't love the way his team is spending money currently in terms of where they're allocating it position wise and paying T. Higgins instead of Trey Hendrickson. But I'm thrilled that Justin Jefferson is considered as part of this list, and will continue to monitor all these 2019 guys in their NFL careers, counting up Pro Bowls, counting up dollars made, and hopefully eventually counting up all pros and Hall of Famers over the next 10 or 12 years and see how things stack up. I didn't know Justin Jefferson was on quite that ascent, but hey, here we are. That's some pretty big-time stuff for the New Orleans native who was great here in Baton Rouge. So that's a look at the ESPN first quarter century team here in 2000 through 2025. Let's step aside. Joe Healy, SEC extra part of the D1 baseball team, was up in Omaha watching the Tigers get it done. We'll talk to him about all of that when we come back.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge. GenesisofBatonRouge.com is the website. Every car that's on the lot is online at GenesisofBatonRouge.com. How about 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty? That's as good as you're going to find in the industry. How about 3 years of complimentary maintenance? Complimentary valet maintenance even. That's as good as you're going to find. It's a luxury brand and a luxury experience at a reasonable price. So when I say Genesis, you should think luxury. When I say luxury, you shouldn't think, oh, well, that's priced me out. You might be surprised. It's a luxury brand at a reasonable price. Go check out the website. Go see the entire inventory there online. You can see it from the SUV down to the sedan. No matter what your situation is, your family situation, your commute situation, they've got a vehicle for you. Get behind the wheel with one of their brand ambassadors and become one of those Genesis drivers. It's an experience. It's Genesis of Baton Rouge. You can find them online at GenesisofBatonRouge.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms.
Thursday shows brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef. Some of the greatest beef you will ever try. And it's right here just outside of Baton Rouge. If you have to ask questions about where your beef comes from or how it was raised or whether or not it's like, just take the questions out of it. Drive up to Ethel. Go see my guy Sean Sagrera. Take a look at the product that you're going to bring home. If you like it, bring it on home. If you don't pay a cent. Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef to bring you our Thursday shows. Joe Healy, D1 Baseball's SEC Extra Team, good enough to join us on Thursdays all year long. It was a good year down here in Baton Rouge. We close things up with Joe today after he's now home from Omaha after a 2-week stay. Joe, how are you?
Doing pretty well. Is it really over? It's kind of hard to imagine, right? I mean, it feels like we just kind of kicked this thing off and now we're done. So, yeah, I guess it is the last one.
It is the last one. There's some good vibes down here in Baton Rouge. They've won it 2 times in 3 years. You have an overarching theme with this LSU baseball team?
I think this is the one that really shows why it is that Jay Johnson is the best head coach we have in college baseball right now and is probably going to go down as one of the greats of all time because, I mean, yes, he did, LSU obviously gives him a lot of resources, and there are a lot of different head coaches that could win national titles at LSU, but I'm not sure how many, no disrespect, could win national titles with this team. And there are obviously a lot of talented players in the team. I'm not trying to say otherwise, but you compare it to the 2023 team that was just like a superstar show. This is different. There's some players that have a chance to play pro baseball, certainly on the mound with those 2 frontline starting pitchers, but the position player group was a lot of veteran pieces, a lot of good college players. Maybe there'll be a big league or 2 in the mix, but it was not the super talented super team that we saw in 2023. And I think what stood out to me most with the way that the roster kind of took shape as the season went on is that I thought Jay did a masterful job of bringing guys back into the fold and never giving up on anybody. And, we saw it with, a guy like Chase Shores who didn't make it in the rotation, and it would have been easy to kind of just cast him aside at that point, but he built him back up to where he was a key piece. They still kept going to Jacob Myers, even though, he had his struggles with command during the year. Ethan Fry wasn't in the lineup every day early in the season, and obviously by the end of it, he was just about as important as anybody in the lineup. Michael Braswell's hitting whatever it was, 170, but he insists on having him in there for defense and experience reasons. And I think we saw in the CWS finals why that was a good decision with his defense there. So just a masterful job of using your entire roster when in college baseball, frankly, I think too often coaches go the other direction and the roster shrinks as time goes on. Jay does the opposite, and he does it better than anybody.
Anderson and Ianson, how do you characterize their journey here from the start to the finish? I think everyone was a little bit apprehensive about replacing Jump and Holman. They did that with style.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think we talked about this. We recorded a podcast at D1 Baseball this morning where we talked a little bit about, the pitching coach job that Nate Yeskie did. And as a pitching coach now, the job is very different than when Nate Yeskie first started to gain some notoriety when he was at Oregon State. In that, gone are the days when you bring in a guy and you're like, all right, we're looking at the 3-year picture with this starting pitcher. that you can't really do that anymore. Like with Anthony Ianson, it was like, look, he's got good enough stuff. He's going to be drafted at the end of this season, almost no matter what his season looks like for us. So we've got to figure out how to get the best out of him right now. And similarly with Cade Anderson, he made a nice progression. So he was a program guy, but we've never seen him start on the weekend in the SEC over the course of an entire season. And so, but again, a guy who was probably going to get drafted. So you had 1 year to optimize him as a member of your rotation. And in doing so, like, he was the best starter in the SEC from start to finish. I think what he did at the end, got him in a position to where he's now passed up Liam Doyle for the best starter in college baseball during the 25 season. And, I think there's a little revisionist history about Anthony Ianson as being this like blue chip superstar transfer. And he was pretty famous. He was on Team USA last summer, but if you look at his numbers, they were pretty good at UC San Diego, but they weren't this. Like, his numbers got better at LSU against the competition they play. And then you compare that to the Big West at UC San Diego and a bunch of pitchers parks, and it even looks even more impressive. And so I just think it's the classic case of a coach understanding, hey, we just got to get what we can out of these guys in this little window here. And it's hard to imagine it going any better than it did with those two guys.
This is a big picture question here, but I'm starting to think about Ianson, Chase Dolander, Skeens, Zach Root, guys that have stuff, and then they transfer into the SEC and kind of really take it to another level. What do you make of that?
I think some of it is just the SEC is uniquely positioned to take raw materials and turn them into a finished product because they just have access. And they're not alone. There are other teams in the ACC and what have you, but the SEC is top to bottom equipped to do this. They have the technology and the resources and not just resources to develop players, but also resources to scout them. Because in some of those cases, they were kind of obvious, but Dolander was a guy who struggled with control at Georgia Southern, and Paul Skeens was a guy who an Air Force transfer, that's not really what you'd think of. And so I think there's resources for scouting too. I mean, they're able to make informed decisions that other teams might not feel comfortable making because they just have better information, more information. And then you see it on the player development side. So I think there are probably a lot of reasons we can sit here and go through over the course of a couple hours. But I think to put a fine point on it is just that those examples you gave are all SEC examples. And, I think it's just, this is where the resources really pay off. We see it in the stadiums and the coaching salaries and all that kind of stuff, but this is where the resources actually matter on the field, is being able to take guys with raw materials and turn them into first-round draft picks, and we've seen it over and over again.
You go to Omaha every year. I went 2 years ago for the championship series and then for the whole time this time, and the ballpark played considerably different. Now, was the win that we watched for most of that kind of an outlier, or how do you feel about the way the ballpark plays year to year?
Yeah, it played shockingly big. The wind is typically in, especially when it's warm. And I'm not a meteorologist, so I can't get any more detail than that. But I'm kind of like Jay Johnson on this, where it's just like, hey, man, just tell me which way it's blowing, and let's just leave it there. But this was bigger than normal. Even when the wind is going in, it didn't play like this. And so I think it's a combination of a lot of things. Did the wind blowing in help make it play big? Yes. Also, I'm pretty certain the balls we're using in college baseball this season were different than what we've been using the last couple of years. That's anecdotal. I don't have the science on that, but I've talked to enough coaches and scouts and what have you that everyone seems pretty comfortable saying that the balls were just different this year. So the ball just wasn't jumping, and home runs were down as a result. Nobody hit 30 home runs this season in college baseball. Last year we had like 5 dudes do it. The year before we had a bunch do it, and including some guys who probably aren't going to be big leaguers. So I think it was just a combination of things. I hope this year's a little bit of a low outlier because it did make it to where, look, it worked out well for LSU, but it did make it to where, if you got more than a 2-run lead late in the game, it was going to take a pretty big meltdown for you to lose that game because the ball just wasn't going to leave the yard more than likely.
I saw one of those meltdowns. It was only 2 runs, but I watched it with my own 2 eyes last Wednesday. But I thought the park played a little bit big for my liking. I mean, the fact that LSU is a pretty good hitting team, Jerry Jones is the only player that hit a home run, I found to be probably not representative of anything close to what you played for the entirety of the season, and then you have to kind of change the way you do things in Omaha. I didn't love that part. I liked the team that won it, but I thought that was I noticed it as I was watching, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm with you. And there was a lot of hand-wringing, right? Like in the press box where folks who, cover certain teams or folks who work for the Omaha World Herald who maybe just don't have the total context of it were coming over to where we sit, the D1 baseball folks, and we're like, is this, was college baseball like not very offensive this year? Like, what's going on here? So anytime the folks who really aren't that plugged into college baseball on a day-to-day basis are starting to ask questions about why the game isn't very offensive, you know that you've got an outlier. So I'm with you in that I don't want to start tinkering with stuff, but I'm just kind of hopeful that, maybe next year we have a little more offensive year. And if we don't, maybe we start talking about, bringing some fences in a little bit. I don't want to overdo that because it's equally not fun if it goes the total other direction. But certainly I do not want to repeat of what we had this year for sure.
Early thoughts on the top of the SEC next year, same suspects, or is there anybody that you've kind of looked at and go, I kind of like, they weren't as good this year, but I kind of like them next year? I mean, the usual suspects are going to be Arkansas, Tennessee, LSU, Florida.
Yeah, all of those, and then I would throw Auburn into the mix. I think they overachieved for what they actually were this year, but I do think it's a preview of what they can be next year. Let's not forget they're arguably the three best hitters minus Ike Irish were freshmen. And you match that with arguably two of the three best pitchers they had going late into the season last year, Christian Chatterton and Andreas Alvarez. By the time the regional came around, were arguably those two guys, and they're freshmen. So they've got some questions to answer. Like they haven't really had a legit Friday guy since Tanner Burns, which is a while now. So that is going to be a question for them. But if they continue to stack classes like this last one on top of each other, they're going to elevate to a whole new level. And I think that makes some sense when you consider that it's obvious when you look at the renovations at the stadium, you look at the quality of player they brought in their most recent class before this season. I do think it's enough to say that administration is investing a little more than they have in the past. So it does make some sense this is happening. So Auburn's the one I'm looking at. That may not be a sexy answer because they were the number 4 national seed, but I honestly think that was a little bit of an overachievement. And that next year, if there's something similar, I think it's going to be more in line with what they actually are.
You're looking for college baseball content all year round. That includes some summer league stuff, and certainly once things crank up in the fall, they got you covered over at d1baseball.com. The SEC Extra Package. Joe Healy, Mark Etheridge, the whole crew does an awesome job. And Joe, we appreciate your time all year long. We'll catch up down the road.
Yeah, absolutely, Hunt. I'll be here anytime you need it. If college baseball is increasingly a 12-month thing, so if you need me, you know where to find me.
Sure do. Thanks, Joe. He is Joe Healy, right. SEC Extra, D1 Baseball, host of the Highway to Hoover podcast as well. He's right. It's a 12-month deal. And speaking of the 12-month deal, we're now into the part of the calendar where transfer portal editions show up, and LSU just got one. I'll tell you who it is and my early thoughts on that when we come back.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Duvall and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. Look, closet space may not be top of mind to everyone, but it's top of mind to some. When I moved into my home, I didn't think twice about it. And then my bride-to-be moved in, and she thought about it immediately. And she's like, this is not going to work. We had stuff all over the house, clothes in the hallway, clothes in the attic, clothes in guest rooms. We didn't have enough space. You can change that without moving like we did. We knew we were headed out of there when the second kid showed up, so we moved. But if you don't want to move and you want better closet space, get a custom closet from One Bath and Closets. David Duvall and his team, happy to help you with that. It starts with a free consultation. They'll get your questionnaire filled out, how many suits you got, how many shoes you got. You putting suitcases in here. What do we need? We need mirrors. We need tie racks. Like how do we need to handle this? And they'll customize a closet to your exact specifications. They'll do it right the first time and leave the competition behind. It's One Bath and Closets. Find them online at onebathandclosets.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms.
All right, wrapping up hour number 1 here. I teased that LSU just nabbed a transfer portal commitment. I told you at the top of the show, I would expect 3 or 4 of these in the next 5 to 6 days. LSU is going to get some visitors on campus this weekend. That generally results in commitments. When players visit Tennessee, Arkansas, LSU, Texas, and Texas A&M, generally, more often than not, they commit because those are pretty impressive places. They've got great NIL programs in place, and they've got championships to their name in the sense of Tennessee and LSU. And these are the most aggressive transfer portal teams in the country. So I think those visits are going to result in commitments. I don't know if this commitment visited this week. I know he's been to the box because he pitched in the box. I've teased this enough. It's the left-handed pitcher that LSU has nabbed out of the transfer portal is North Dakota State left-hander Danny Lockenmeyer. I learned about Danny Lockenmeyer 13 minutes ago, so I don't know what he looks like, what his stuff profiles as. I never heard of him outside of when he pitched against LSU, and I quickly forgot about that, obviously, because it was back in February. But I can look at his stat sheet, and I can give you some objective metrics. Lockenmeyer is left-handed, which is good. He is 6'3", 195 pounds, which is good. And he just finished his freshman year, which is also good. You're looking at a guy that had big strikeout numbers at North Dakota State, 56 strikeouts in 38 innings of work. When he pitched against LSU in a midweek relief outing, he threw 1 2/3 innings against the Tigers, gave up 1 hit and 2 earned runs. He struck out 3 in that inning and 2/3, so he got 5 outs. 3 of them were strikeouts, had 1 walk, did not allow an extra base hit. So I'll have to go back and look at the box score and see how he allowed so much. I mean, both the guys he allowed to reach base scored, so that was a hit and a walk. Both guys scored, but he struck out 3, which is good. What I really liked as far as the numbers go, and again, I don't know if he throws sidearm, if he throws 100. I don't know anything about his profile as a pitcher. I can just look at the numbers because this is brand new. But I can tell you that in his last 7 outings, am I counting that right? Yeah, final 7 outings, totaled 13 2/3 innings, and he did not allow an earned run over those 7 outings. It was 13 2/3 innings. Let's see how many strikeouts were in those 13 2/3 for Lockenmeyer, because that's a huge number. You're talking about 10, 13, 14, 15, 17 strikeouts. So it's clearly he's got pretty big stuff. I realize that striking out Oral Roberts, St. Thomas, and Omaha, and Kansas and Creighton. So they were in the Arkansas Regional. Because, North Dakota State was. So he pitched against Kansas and Creighton in the regional. In the regional against those 2 teams, he threw 3 1/3 innings, no earned runs, 4 hits, and 10 strikeouts in those 2 outings. So big stuff, apparently, from this guy. I like adding a left-hander. If you look at next year's roster that is returning, DJ Primo can come back from the left side. I anticipate that he will. Connor Ware can come back from the left side. I don't think he will, but that remains to be seen. So you need left-handed pitching, and this guy has been a reliever. As I look through his outings, you see the longest outing he had this year was 3 1/3 against Oral Roberts, and that was when he struck out 7. So this is a guy who's been a reliever but has good size, big strikeout numbers. Jay Johnson has seen him, and this is something we've seen Jay Johnson do. He went and got Zach Cowan last year after he scouted him hard for the regional, and that obviously paid off in a big way this year. We've seen him go get guys that LSU played against and bring them in. I'm trying to think if there's another hitter that comes to mind immediately. Again, this is not a segment I've prepped. This is something that just fell in my lap, so I'm trying to consider. I mean, obviously, LSU saw Luke Holman on tape as he came from Alabama. He famously didn't pitch against LSU, got scratched in that game, but coach got fired. But he scouted Luke Holman before then and certainly brought him in. Chris Stanfield is a guy that LSU played against, that LSU brought in and liked what he could give them. So this is another instance that I'm confident that Jay Johnson saw him in scouting, saw him in the game against LSU. And when that happened, they immediately knew what they were looking at. You can go pull the tape pretty quickly from a home game. And that's a guy who you don't necessarily have to get to campus for a visit because he was here and played in the stadium when LSU, I'm sure, had a pretty nice crowd in a February game. And you realize that he's from Minnesota, played baseball at North Dakota State. Weather is okay down here in February to come down and play a little bit of baseball. So that's a guy that you probably don't have to work too hard. He's already seen it. Probably a guy that's a little bit under the radar. I mean, Tommy White goes in the portal. Thatcher Hurd goes in the portal. Luke Holman goes in the portal. Like, everybody's going. I would imagine Danny Lockenmeyer going in the portal is not going to send off alarms in Tony Vitello's office or Jim Schlossnagle's office. Just a guess. Maybe it does. I'm not there. But I would imagine that's not the case. But LSU would have seen it and gone, oh, yeah, remember that kid, and then you go make a push. So, again, I expect LSU to be selectively aggressive over the next week and a half in adding guys to this roster. I expect that they'll add some really good talent, and you got to have left-handed pitching. Jay Johnson said he learned that from Augie Garrido. That he said, I'm going to build my teams around left-handed pitching and left-handed hitting because most teams don't have it. I can find a right-handed pitcher or a right-handed hitter just about anywhere. Most teams don't have lefties. And if you're LSU, you're lacking in lefties, and you need to go grab one, and Danny Lockenmeyer becomes that first guy in the boat as a left-handed pitcher. LSU brought in 2 infielders last week and 2 weeks ago in the transfer portal, but as far as pitching goes, this is the first edition. I just kind of work off of the assumption that LSU is going to find a weekend starter in the transfer portal. I'm not saying it's going to have to be Skeens, but they're going to find Ianson or Holman or Hurd or Jump or one of those guys that's going to come in and help. I don't know if this profiles as that. It looks like he was a reliever on North Dakota State team. Maybe they think he's a really good left-handed reliever here, but that's the beauty of summer ball and then into the fall. You can kind of get a sense of what guys can be. And I do know that Lockenmeyer did extend a little bit later in his outings. A lot of one-inning outings early in the season, a couple of that were 3 innings in the end of the season. So I like the numbers on this. I'll have to go look at the video on it and see if I have a different thought. But for me, this is a pretty good ad based on the numbers that I'm getting 10 minutes after this commitment goes public. So Danny Lockenmeyer is headed to LSU, left-handed pitcher from North Dakota State. That's it for hour number 1. Our Thursday show is brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef. If you missed any of the first hour, catch it on demand. 1045ESPN.com's on-demand tab, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google. Wherever you find your sound, you can find us. Talked about some LSU baseball with Joe Healy. When we come back after SportsCenter, Keith Law has fast risers in this upcoming draft. 2 of them are from LSU. One might not be you thinking. What's next?
The Hunt Palmer Show.